Hi kids, I'm Mrs. Bush and I'm your chemistry teacher this year. I'm not starting out the year with you because I had knee replacement surgery 3 weeks ago and I've still got a few weeks to work on my recovery so that I don't fall down every time I try to walk in front of you in the classroom. So we're going to start the year and we'll be proceeding through the first couple weeks via video. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, this is my 8th year at Olathe North and my 10th year teaching chemistry. Before that, I taught 21 years at Frontier Trail. I am married and I have 2 children, Joe and Lori. Joe and Lori are both in college. Well, Joe's in grad school. And then I have a 4-legged child named Teddy, who is very friendly and is passed out in the other room right now because he just went for a walk with a neighbor. Because I can't take him for a walk because I'm using a walker. So that's a little bit about me. Hopefully you guys have gone around and introduced yourselves to Mrs. Eidrich and spent some time, sharing something about yourself. And we're not going to start with the basic rules and guidelines and expectations and things like that. We're going to dive right into elements. The one thing that I will make you do for this class is you have to memorize 45 element symbols. You don't have to memorize the whole periodic table. No matter where you go in your lifetime, any chemistry class you're sitting in, there's going to be a periodic table available. No one expects you to memorize everything about it. But by knowing certain element symbols, that makes learning chemistry a lot faster. Okay, now this is the same video for both College Chem and Honors Chem. You guys have the same list of elements. So, College Chem, this is the first time you're seeing this, but you all had chemistry either last year or the year before, so you have a basic idea about elements and element symbols. Honors kids, you should have gotten all of this over the summer. If you didn't, you're going to have the opportunity to now. Next Friday, not tomorrow, but the following Friday, and I have no idea what date that is because I do not have a calendar in front of me, we will be taking an element quiz. Now, the thing about this quiz, because I'm asking you to memorize, if you get a 90% or higher, you get a candy bar. And no, I'm not talking about fun size little Milky Ways. I'm talking about a regular full-sized candy bar. Okay, we'll have a selection for you to choose from. If you get 100%, you get a candy bar. We will do this again when we get to ions. There'll be a list of polyatomic ions that you'll need to memorize. That'll be a candy bar quiz as well. Not all the quizzes are worth candy bars. Tests are not worth candy bars. This is a special case because I'm asking you to memorize, and so it's a bribe, straight out. I used to do this when I taught junior high school and taught 9th grade physical science. And once I started offering the bribe, my kids aced it every year. So, fair warning. All right, I'm going to go through this list of elements. I'm going to give you some ways to remember. You have a list in front of you that has been provided for you. You're also going to get flashcards. I recommend that you do the flashcards. If you have time today, get started on them today, but otherwise you can finish on them tomorrow. Cut them up, put them into envelopes, and use those to study with. That would be my recommendation, however you want to do it. All right, so we're going to go through this list. The first one is gold. Gold's symbol is AU. That comes from the Latin aurum. If you've ever seen James Bond, I like to reference James Bond a lot in class. One of the movies is called Goldfinger, and he loves gold, and his first name is Auric, which comes from the Latin aurum, meaning gold. Gold we use the Latin symbol, the symbol from the Latin name, because this is one of the few elements that has been around forever, that people have been aware of. Some of the other elements we didn't realize they were elements. But gold is something that has been of value and been used by alchemists and chemists throughout the ages. Oh, forgot to tell you. How do you remember that Au is gold? I'm going to move my picture so I'm not in front of the gold. There we go. How do you remember Au? Well, if someone steals your gold, you know what you do. You yell, Au! That's my gold! It works. Yes, they're cheesy. Silver. Argentina is named Argentina because there was silver found there. It comes from the Latin word argentum. Again, silver's been around a long time. It's an element that was known to the early alchemists, and therefore we use the Latin name and the symbol from the Latin name. So, if you get silver instead of gold at Christmas, you might say, "Aw, gee, it's silver." Again, corny, but effective. Copper. Copper, again, we're going to use the Latin. The Latin word for copper is cupric. We use Cu, capital C, lowercase u. If one way to remember, maybe your grandmother has a copper kettle or copper pot. That was a big fashion statement back in the 80s. And you might say, "Oh, I see you have some copper, Granny." The next one, lead. Again, another element that's been around for a long time. These are all metals. These are all things that the alchemists used. We've known about them for ages. The Latin word for lead is plumbum. That is where we get the word plumbing from. One of the thoughts of the decline of the Roman Empire was that they used lead pipes to bring their water into their cities, and they got lead poisoning. Plumbum, the way to remember lead, PB, is plumber's butt. When the plumber bends over, you see his butt crack. Okay? Iron comes from the Latin word ferrous, and we use Fe for iron. The way to remember iron, I'm going to try this and see if it works. This is my favorite joke. I normally just draw this on the whiteboard. Anybody know what that is? If you said Ferris wheel, you're correct. Ferris wheels are made of iron, so that's how you can remember iron, is Fe. Mercury comes from the Latin for hydrogyrum. Mercury, of course, is the only metal that is liquid at room temperature. Gallium will melt in your hand, but all the other metals are solid. And mercury comes hydrogyrum. If you think back to your earth science days, which I have no idea where they teach that in the middle schools anymore because they've changed it all around, but the planet closest to the sun is Mercury, and Mercury is a hot guy. So you can think Hg, Mercury, hot guy. Tin comes from the Latin, the symbol comes from the Latin stannus, S-N. My ninth graders used to always say sine tin. That's how they would remember it back when I first started teaching this. At least one group did. Sine tin is how they would remember it. It comes from the Latin stannus. So tin is SN. Now we're going to get into those first 7 are the ones that have been around for a long time. So now we're going to get into elements that are more modern. Aluminum, they knew aluminum comes from the ore bauxite, and they knew about bauxite, but they didn't realize they could get aluminum out of bauxite until about the 1800s. And at the time, it was the most precious metal. It was more expensive than gold. Napoleon Bonaparte from France, he had his place setting and everything on his table made of aluminum because it was the most expensive metal there was. The top of the Washington Monument is also made of aluminum. I know one reason is because it doesn't corrode easily, and also I think because it was expensive, so it showed some affluence. Al is the aluminum recycling guy. That's how you can remember it. Zn stands for zinc. Okay? Pretty simple way to remember that one. Chromium, a lot of people like to put CH. It's not, it's CR. Chromium is a part of chrome. Chrome is a mixture of chromium and iron and other elements, other metals. Chrome, if you've got silver handles on your in your bathrooms at home, those are chrome plated bathroom fixtures. Nickel, Ni. Nickel. Cobalt, CO. None of these I have anything really very catchy for. Tungsten comes from, not Latin, Norwegian or Swedish, I can't remember which, but it comes from wolfram. I think it's Norwegian. Wolfram. Tungsten has the highest melting point of all metals. Tungsten is what makes up the little thin filament wires in the old-fashioned light bulbs. You probably are used to having light bulbs that have LEDs in them and things like that nowadays. But the older light bulbs have a little filament of tungsten, and tungsten would burn when it was heated up. It would give off bright light, and that's why we had, those are incandescent bulbs. Tungsten, of course, is something that's in short supply, though. So we not only did we need to get more energy efficient light bulbs by replacing it with LEDs and some of the other types, but we also needed to save the tungsten. So there you go. Manganese, Mn. That often gets confused with magnesium, which is different. Sodium, another element with a Latin name. If someone asks you, do you want some sodium, you say, nah. Sodium is a part of sodium chloride, which is a compound, and that's table salt. Table salt can raise your blood pressure. I have a friend on Facebook right now who is doing a low blood pressure diet because she's getting ready to have some kind of radiation on her thyroid glands, so she can't have any salt, and so she's been complaining about French fries with no salt. When someone said, do you want some sodium? She said, nah. Potassium, right below sodium on the periodic table, it comes from kalium. If you probably didn't get this deep in earth science with minerals, but if you've talked about feldspar, sometimes they have feldspar that's got, it'll have the letter K out in front of it. That's because it's got a lot of potassium in it. Potassium is, of course, good for you. Bananas have potassium in it. The way you remember potassium, if someone says, do you want some sodium? You say, nah. Do you want some potassium? Okay. Lithium is in the same family as sodium and potassium. It's on the top of the periodic table. Lithium can be found in lithium batteries. If you take a lithium battery apart, you'll actually get actual lithium out of it. You don't want to do that, though, because it could explode on you. Lithium's also was kind of a wonder drug. They discovered they could give that to people who had manic depressive episodes of manics and depression, and it would help them regulate. Magnesium. Magnesium burns very, very brightly. When you see fireworks and you see all the stars that are the white, bright colors, those are all magnesium pellets burning. Okay, magnesium's Mg. Calcium below that is Ca. Again, nothing special. Strontium below that is Sr. Strontium gives off a beautiful red color when it is burned. Calcium is a yellow color. Sodium's an orange. Potassium's a purpley peach. Lithium's a bright pink. Those of you who have been through chemistry before will remember having done flame test lab. And those of you who have not taken chemistry before, you'll get to do the flame test lab later on and experience this. Barium. What do you do with a dead guy? Yeah, barium. Barium is something that they put, if you've ever had to go have an x-ray, you'll drink a barium drink, and so it shows up in your, like if you want to show your esophagus or what, your stomach, it shows up so you can see, like as you swallow it. My son had to do that. He had to have an x-ray taken and he had to swallow barium was a liquid like a milkshake, and you could see it going down and see how his esophagus worked. Radium. Radium was discovered by Marie Curie. She was the first French, she was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize. She discovered radium, and I just finished reading a book, and she had the radium in a big old lead-lined suitcase she would carry around with her, and when the Germans invaded Paris, her daughter got the radium and hid it somewhere because she didn't want to lose that. They had 1 or 2 grams, and that's it. But it was very, very valuable. There's another book, for those of you that like history, called Radium Girls, and it's about the young girls that worked in the factories. Radium, of course, glows in the dark, and they used to paint it onto clocks so that you could see the clock dial in the dark, and they would paint it onto instruments in an airplane instrument panel, especially with the advent of World War I. This is all the early 1900s. The girls in the Radium book, Radium Girls story, would take a paintbrush, and they would go and point it with their tongue and dip it in the radium and paint, and then point it with their tongue and paint some more to keep a nice crisp point. They then got radioactive sickness, and one girl's jaw fell off. It talks about in the book Radium Girls. It's an excellent book if you're looking for something. If you like nonfiction, real life stuff, it's good. It's well written. Titanium. I wish I could sing the song. There was a song about titanium not too long ago, but I can't, so I'm not going to. Titanium, Ti. Boron is a nonmetal. It's B. Boron rods will gobble up neutrons, so boron rods are what they use in a nuclear power plant to slow the nuclear reaction down, and then they pull the boron rods out, it speeds back up. Another thing I did this summer, I watched the miniseries Chernobyl, and I read the book on Chernobyl, which was a nuclear accident in 1986 in Russia, and they talked about the boron rods in that. I won't bore you with more details, but another outstanding book if you're interested. Carbon, C. Carbon is, we're all carbon-based life forms. Pencil leads aren't really made of lead, they're made of graphite, which is pure carbon. Diamonds, pure carbon, just in a different form. Silicon. Notice I have a picture of Sports Illustrated. How do you remember silicon as Si? Well, when you say silicon, most people think of silicone implants. And where do you see silicone implants? In the Sports Illustrated SI magazine when we have the swimsuit issue. So there's your way to remember silicon, Sports Illustrated. Nitrogen, most common element in the air, makes up 70% of our air, and very inert, very strong bonds in the 2 nitrogens that make it up. This is a picture of them pouring liquid nitrogen out. Phosphorus, the bombs the incendiary bombs that they dropped on Britain, and probably the Allies probably dropped them on the Germans. A lot of them had phosphorus in it, and phosphorus is a substance, white phosphorus that is a substance that will burn until it's all used up. So if you get a piece of white phosphorus on your skin, you literally have to cut the skin off to get it out. Otherwise, it's going to burn until the phosphorus is gone. Scary stuff. Red phosphorus, not as scary. I did an experiment when I student taught and changed red phosphorus to white phosphorus, and it terrified me because I thought I was going to get it on my clothes and I would have to strip naked in front of my class. I didn't, though, so that was good. Oxygen, we're all familiar with oxygen. It's what we breathe. You've all taken biology. You've got all this. Sulfur. Sulfur is a nonmetal. The symbol is S. Selenium. All right. Honors kids. You're going to notice this was not on your list. I wanted 45. There's only 44 on the list, so add this to your list. This is one that you didn't learn this summer. Okay, selenium is a non-metal. It's a metalloid. When you add it to glass, it gives a red color. That's what makes stoplights red. At least the old stoplights before they started doing the LEDs. And it's one of my favorite elements. So, fluorine is a non-metal. It's a halogen. It is a gas, a very reactive gas. It's the most reactive non-metal. The most reactive metal would be francium, if you can ever find enough of francium to get a sample of it. Usually there's only a few atoms in existence at any one time because it's a byproduct of other reactions. Chlorine gas, we add, chlorine gets added to the pool. Chlorine's poisonous. If you've ever been at the pool when they've had you clear out because maybe they put too much chlorine in or your eyes were burning. One time we were at Worlds of Fun and we couldn't go in the wave pool because something had happened. They'd had a chlorine leak. A bunch of people got sick. Chlorine's poisonous. Sodium we already met. Sodium's a metal. Sodium will burn and change into sodium hydroxide in the presence of water. So you don't want to eat sodium, you don't want to eat chlorine, yet when you put sodium and chlorine together, they become table salt, which we all love to put on our Freddy's French fries. So how does that happen? That's part of what chemistry is and what we're going to talk about this year. Bromine is a liquid. It's the other liquid at room temperature from the periodic table besides mercury. It becomes a gas very easily. It is very similar to chlorine and fluorine. I didn't mean to do that. How do I go back? Oh, I just click on the, sorry. Tech emergency for a moment. I used to be the one that all the teachers came and asked to set their grade books up back in the day. I used to be the tech queen. Not anymore. All right, iodine, symbol is I. Iodine becomes a gas very easily. It's subliming, just like carbon dioxide becomes a gas very easily. It changes from a solid to a gas. It doesn't melt. Iodine doesn't melt either. Oops, I just knocked my microphone off. All right, hydrogen, the simplest element, the most abundant in the universe. It's what stars are made of. Hydrogen, H. Helium, one way to remember helium, if you inhale helium, you get a high squeaky voice and you laugh. Hee 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 hee. Neon went to Las Vegas this summer for our vacation. Lots of neon in Vegas, although it's rapidly being replaced with LEDs. But neon, if you put neon into a tube and run electricity through it, it will glow this nice orangey red color. Argon, same story. Argon is just like neon. Helium also, you could put it into a tube and it will give you a color when you run electricity through it. Krypton, same story. It's a gas. You run electricity through it, you'll get a color. Uranium. Uranium is the Henri Becquerel was the first guy to discover that uranium was radioactive. He was doing something and he was going to expose film, and it was a cloudy day. So he had a piece of film, but it was covered up, and he'd put some uranium salts on top of it. So he put it in a drawer, and later on he took it out and developed it, and he had all sorts of light exposure on the film because uranium was giving off radiation, the electromagnetic radiation that showed up when the film was developed. We know uranium is used for bombs, for nuclear bombs. It's more often used in nuclear power plants, though, and it's the most common form is uranium-238, which is a little more stable. 235 is the one that they use in the nuclear power plants to get heat from to create energy. Radon, this part of the world, radon is found in our ground. Our old house, which was over on the west side of town by Rolling Ridge, we had to put a radon pump in before we moved because apparently we had a high level of radon in the basement. Radon can cause cancer, and I've often wondered if that wasn't part of the cause of my husband's lymphoma 10 years ago, although I've been told that lymphoma is not something that radon causes, so apparently I was wrong. Platinum. Platinum is a very common metal to be used in rings now. Platinum, just like gold, it's fairly stable. It doesn't react a whole lot. Platinum. Xenon, another from the noble gases. It will also light up if you add electricity to it. Vanadium. Vanadium is named for the Norwegian god Vanadis, who was the goddess of beauty. Vanadium here, it's a metal, but when you dissolve vanadium salts, they have really pretty colors depending on how many electrons they have in the atom. You can get them to change to several different colors. We'll see that later this year. All right, so there are your elements. That's 45 elements if I've counted correctly. You have a moment now. If you've got time to start the flashcards, great. If not, that's what you're going to do tomorrow. You'll have some time tomorrow to do that. You're also going to play bingo tomorrow with element bingo. And so there you go. That gets you through. Thank you very much.